Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. We serve a wonderful God. He is such an amazing God. What a privilege we have to serve such a wonderful God. Why I say this? Because we serve a living God. He is there from yesterday, today, and forever. He is an eternal God. He is a living God. That is why we have this joy of worshiping this God, because wherever we might be, in whatever situations we might be, in everything, when we start worshiping God, we have the assurance that He is in our midst. When He is in our midst, He takes the pleasure and His people start worshiping Him. When He takes a pleasure, He is ready to do something in our life. So that is why I encourage you, dear people, start worshiping God, because this is a season of worship. You and I might think, how I can say this is a season of worship where entire world is in fear, where entire world is in pain, entire world is in hopeless situation, thinking what is going to happen next. They are feeling that we don't have any surety that what is there for us in next moment, but you are saying this is a season of worship. That's what I'm saying to you, my dear people of God. Worship is not dependent on what we have, how we are, in what we are possessing, and what we have achieved. Nothing as such. Worship is dependent on who our God is. Our God is a living God, and He is worthy of worship. He alone is worthy of worship. When He is worthy of our worship, and He is all what we want in our life, when we feel this, you and I cannot stop ourselves. We will be worshipping in any season. And that's where we're looking up to this subject called season of worship. And we looked about the passage in John chapter 4 verse 24. It says, "Yet the time is coming, and now has come, that the worshippers will worship the Lord in spirit and in truth." I tell you, this time has come. You have to understand that I'm not going to wait for another comfortable season to come. I'm not going to wait that everything will work conveniently for me. I'm not going to wait that when my prayers are answered, then I'll worship. But I tell you, the time has come to worship. You and I have to realize that time has come to worship. But that is why I'm teaching you that this is a season of worship. Don't see around the world. You and I are the God's people. And that's why we read in the Bible, in an unusual times and unusual way, God expected His people to praise and worship Him. When the Israelites, the people of God, have faced a big hindrance before them, a gigantic wall before them, which cannot be brought down by their own strength and by their own knowledge, God has given them a strategy saying, each day you will come around the wall silently. On the seventh day, you will come around 7 times. On the 7th time, you will blow the trumpet, you will praise and lift up the name of the Lord. You and I might think, oh, such a gigantic wall is there before us, which cannot be brought down by any technology or any of the human power. But God is saying just to come around and give praise. But that is the strategy of God, and through that wall has come down. But that is why I'm saying to you, in midst of a difficult and impossible situations, as you start worshiping, everything will come under your feet. You will see the victory of God. You and I do not have to do any big thing. We have to keep praising and worshiping the Lord. That's why I'm saying this is a season of worship. Maybe world is under the fear of this pandemic and affected by this pandemic, and they are suffering from this pandemic. But you are the child of God, are called to worship a God. This is a season of worship. We looked about the background of this passage. It says in the beginning of this chapter, verse 4, John chapter 4, verse 4, it says, He had to go through Samaria. He must go to the Samaria. What does it mean, go through Samaria? Must go through, had go through. That's what I said. Nothing happens in a child of God's child's life, in everything, in anything, in accident or by chance, but it is in the plan of God. So that is why we see here, Jesus had to go through Samaria. He had to wait in that well. Why? Because that is a sign of God to meet with that woman. And I'm telling you, this is a time for your life that God is ready to meet with you. in midst of this impossible, hopeless situation of your life, it is a appointed time of God. It's a kairos of God. It's a God's timing in your life. God is meeting you at this point so that you and I will realize, I'm not going to wait for my time to come, but my time has already come and I'm going to worship the Lord. Word of God says in verse 4, he must go through Samaria. He need to go through. Why? The word is stressed over here. Why the Samaria has been highlighted here? Because I told you, any Jew will never go through Samaria. They will go across. They will go around if they have to go to Galilee or Nazareth. They will go around. Why? Because they felt Samaritans are the defiled people. They are compromised people. They had compromised the faith of this world. They got mingled with the Gentile people and started worshipping the Gentile God and started building up the high places for the Gentile gods. And that is where they felt they are rejected ones. And that is why the Samaritans are not allowed to come to Jerusalem, to come to the house of God, to worship the Lord, but they are restricted. They have been rejected. They have been sick. They have been isolated. They kept aside. They were not respected. That is why Jesus has to teach to them, who are the Samaritans? They are not strangers. They are not Gentiles. Many Christians, they use this word. Samaritans are Gentiles. They are not Gentiles, my dear people. If you go to Book of Kings and Chronicles, you can read about the history. They are the family members of Israel. They are the brothers. They are one among the 12 tribes. Because of their choices, they choose to get mingled with the Gentile people and they choose to worship the Gentile God. They have been rejected. They have been set aside. They are not allowed to come to Jerusalem. But they are not Gentiles. They are mingled with the Gentiles. They are the family of Israel. How we know? That's what we read in verse 20 onwards. It says, she says to Jesus, are you greater than our ancestors? Our ancestors who gave this well to us. That means what? She says, we are also part of this family. Your father is our father. Your ancestor is our ancestor. We are one family, but because of our forefathers' choice, because of our people from our tribe, they choose to worship the Gentile gods, we are being rejected. So these Samaritans, there were Samaritans, there were the group of Samaritans, they were eagerly thirsty that when will I get chance to go to Jerusalem, I'll worship my Yahweh God. They are not given permission, they are not allowed. But not all the Samaritans are defiled people. Not all the Samaritans choose to do as the other Samaritans were doing. There were people waiting, eagerly waiting. How we know? The Samaritans, when she was talking to Jesus, she says, are you that Messiah for whom we are waiting for? Amen. Are you that Samaritan? Many times we misquote and say Samaritans are the Gentiles. They are not Gentiles. They are mingled with the Gentiles. They are considered as a defiled people. So the word says Jesus had to go through Samaria. Why? That was a plan of God for that great woman, the Samaritan woman. Today we are going to look about the Samaritan woman. Please don't forget what the background I talked about the Samaritans, because this will help us to understand John chapter 4 verse 24, why Jesus specifically to this woman he is speaking like this. First, the entire community, the Samaritans are the ones who have been rejected. They have been called, they have felt and seen like a defiled people, not worthy to come to the house of God to worship. But there were people among the Samaritans who are waiting for this Messiah to come so that I will set free to go and worship this Yahweh God. But their focus, their idea is the worship is done in Jerusalem temple. I have to go to Jerusalem. I have to go to the Jerusalem temple. I had to worship there. That was their focus. That was their expectation. When will I get chance to go to Jerusalem temple? But today, God has come to change it. This is the day, the appointed day, the Kairos time of God for this Samaritan woman. That is why in Bible, her name was not mentioned. Simply say Samaritan woman. Nothing else was more mentioned about her. Samaritan woman. Why? Because this woman is a representation. This woman is the person who is presenting the entire community, entire people group. That's what I'm telling you. When Jesus meets with you, His plan is not only for you, through you, your family, your generations, your city, your nation. You are a representation of a big community. You are a appointed person for your own community. And it's the plan of God through you to change the entire community. That's what we read over here. He was waiting. And we see the Samaritan woman has come, and we know the entire story. Jesus asked from the Samaritan woman to give some water to this well, and she says, how come being a Jew asking from a Samaritan and help? But why we have to look about this woman? When we read about this woman, when Jesus was interacting with her, the point comes and Jesus asks from her, bring your husband. And she says, I have no husband. And Jesus said, yes, you say the truth, because you had 5 husbands already, and with whom you are, he is not your husband. Now I tell you, very sadly I'm saying this, please forgive me, very humbly I'm telling you, not to judge anyone, not to say that I know something special, or I got some the different knowledge or idea, but very humbly I want to tell you, my dear people of God, in Bible it is only said Samaritan woman, but many of our preachers, great people of God, has tagged her as a prostitute or adulterer woman. Why? Simply because Jesus said, yes, you had 5 husbands. But in this passage, if you carefully notice, Jesus has never mentioned her as a prostitute. Bible never says she's a prostitute. When Bible is not saying that she's a prostitute, when Jesus is not said, he's not saying that she's a prostitute, then who am I to say that she's a prostitute? Many of us, we claim this because this verse says she had 5 husbands. My dear people of God, I wanted to tell you, prostitutes will not have husbands. They will have men. Each day or each time, they may go to any man. They may have any man in their life, but all the men will never become their husbands. The term husband means you have come into a covenantal relationship. That means the person who has made a covenant with that person. Then only they could call as a husband and wife. What we do, the couple is brought to the priest, and they are friend of the priest, they make the vow, and then the priest declares that now I present this couple as a wedded husband and wife. From then they will be called as a husband and wife. So that means somebody has come into a covenantal relationship. So when the word says that she had 5 husbands, it means she has been married for 5 times. Now, it doesn't mean that she was living with all the 5, or it doesn't mean that in the same timings, when she was married to a first man, she is married to a second person and third person. Not like that. Because we all know, even in the time of Jesus, this is considered as a great thing of shame for a woman if she marries 2-3 people at one time. Maybe she might have divorced first time. Maybe in the second time, maybe her husband might have died. She became a widow. Some of the reason was there that she entered into this covenantal relationship for 5 times. But what has happened, at the end she finds that this relationship is not satisfying the thirst which she has in her. Her thirst was not just the physical thirst. Her desire and need was not just a man for her life. That is why even after marrying for 5 times, whatever reason, maybe every marriage has been broken, or every marriage was changed, or the covenant was broken and came into another time. But all these 5 times, she found out that this is not satisfying me. So that is why the word says, now with whom she is, she's not in the covenantal relationship. She's not coming to that relationship. She's just there. Maybe she needs some moral support. She might need some man to be there to help her morally or in other ways. So that's why she might be with some person not in a covenant relationship. So just because of all these reasons, people have tagged her saying she's a prostitute or she's an adulterer. But I tell you, what is a prostitution is? Prostitution is it's a profession of a woman to earn money for herself or for her livelihood. That's what prostitute is. She makes that style of job, that makes as a job for her to make her livelihood. They are only called prostitutes. She has made her lifestyle in that to make her livelihood in that way. She has been married for 5 times. Maybe she might have married because the husband might have died, or she might have got divorced. Because in time of Jesus, the divorcees were allowed to get married. The divorced woman is allowed to get married. Unless if they are already in a covenant, they are not allowed. So that means she is not made this as a profession for her livelihood, or not she was being unfaithful to somebody and this been covenant with someone else. Nothing is mentioned about it. But you and I, because it says 5 times you married and the one who is with you, now he's not a husband. So we come into such understanding and say she's a prostitute. And just understand, my Jesus, even though he has changed many social systems, for example, he has crossed to Samaria. Socially, the Jewish people will never go through this community, never cross through this. So Jesus has changed this. He has break this thing. He has crossed over the limitations of the social ways. He has gone through Samaria. But at the same time, he is very mindful. He is very careful how he is with the people. Because he is very mindful that the kingdom of God or the work of God should not be defiled. If she would have been a prostitute, I would have challenged you. I could challenge and say, Jesus would have not spent time with her alone. Jesus would have not taken time to talk with her, so much of time alone with her. Why? Because the reputation of her life may affect the reputation of ministry of Jesus. Because he has to go to the community and preach the community. Already people are talking against Jesus, saying he's a friend of a sinner. He goes to the sinner's house. He eats with the sinner people. And if he spends time with the prostitute alone, how would have been Jesus been pictured among the people? So surely I believe she's not a prostitute. But because of the terms which we read, we have tagged into her. Why I'm saying this? Maybe from our generation, from our people, let's change this. Why we need to tag her? Who we are to tag her saying she's a prostitute? Instead of, as the Bible says, we will say she's a Samaritan woman. The woman has a thirst in her, thirst of acceptance, thirst of recognition, thirst of going to the presence of God to worship. There was a desire. How would I say this? Because as she was talking to Jesus, when Jesus told about her, he said, "Are you that prophet? Are you that Messiah of whom we are waiting for?" What a wonderful thing. She is a woman was waiting for Messiah. That is why Jesus had appointed that day to meet with her. That is why Jesus has appointed that time to meet with her. Jesus knows our thirst. Jesus knows what we are praying for, what we are expecting for. That is why Jesus had to go through Samaria, had to wait in this well to meet with this woman, because this is a woman of a representation of the entire community. Because this entire community, the people belonging to God, for God, their God has mingled with the Gentiles and become defiled by worshipping and sacrificing to the idols, and they're rejected. So this woman is the entire picture of the Samaritans, that this woman, as we do now, she's rejected because of our lifestyle, or because of what has gone through in our life. She's not accepted. finally, I want to tell that she's not a prostitute because the word says when she went to the city, brought the people to the Jesus, they said to her, "We came by hearing you. We have come to test that this is really the Messiah has come. But now, as we saw Jesus, as we meet with the Messiah, we are confident knowing that he is the Messiah." And they took him along with him to the city. Just think about if a prostitute goes to a city or goes to the men of this place and says, "I found Messiah." They will mock at her and say, yeah, every night you get a Messiah. If you don't get any person, any customer, that means there is no Messiah for you for that day, for your livelihood. I would never imagine that any community of people will just accept the word of a prostitute and come. It says these men heard her and come to meet with Jesus. That means she's not a prostitute, but she's a woman of influence. She's a woman of approach. That means she had some approach. That means she had some influence. So that is why in her message, in her words, there were a group of people to come. My dear people of God, don't flow away the way the world calls you. The world may say any name to you. The world may say you are rejected, you are defiled, you are not worthy, you are not accepted. But I tell you, Jesus sees you as your child. You are his child, you are his accepted ones, and he has a great plan for you, from you to make a big impact on the city. And that's what's happening in her life. She had a desire, she had a thirst in her. When will I get a chance to meet with Messiah? She might have heard in Jerusalem Messiah has come and doing wonderful things. She's heard from our forefathers and the prophets that Messiah is going to come and deliver you. So that is why there was a thirst. And there was a group of people, they were thirsty for the Messiah to come. And that was the time of their life that Messiah has come. And that is why Jesus said, now the time has come. And that's why I'm telling you, my dear people of God, don't be carried away of the way the world calls you. Because the plan which God has for you is different. You are not a rejected one. You are not a defiled one. You are his own handmaiden. You are his own child. And by his blood, he has purchased you. By his sacrifice, he has chosen you. And now, in Jesus, you're the child of God. And he has a great plan for you. This Samaritan woman was seen as a prostitute by many preachers. But in Bible it's not mentioned like that. She is just mentioned as a Samaritan woman because she is a representation of a great community. The community which was rejected, the community was not accepted, to allowed, made seen as a worthy to come into the house of God. That is why to this woman Jesus said that the time has come. Now you don't have to wait that I will go to Jerusalem, I will worship the Yahweh God. You don't have to wait for the time to come that in particular festival I'll go to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord. You don't have to wait, oh, on that mountain, how will I get chance to go? You don't have to wait, when will I get chance to give sacrifices? I am rejected, I have been seen as defiled. But now time has come that the worshipper of God will worship the Lord in spirit and truth. And that's what I want to encourage you. Forget what world says to you. Jesus says, you are my child. And he has a great plan for you, through you, to impact a great city. Don't forget, you're a representation of a big community. I want to tell you, my dear people of God, when I see myself, I was not knowing Jesus till the age of 14. I was worshipping the God and gods whom my parents introduced to me. I thought they are my God, they are my creator, they created me, but I forgot to see they have been created by human beings through stones and woods and golds and silvers and many things. I was faithfully worshipping those things. I gave all my devotion to them, and I was filled all my heart I was worshipping till the day in my life when I met with Jesus, when he made me to realize I was not a drunkard. I was not the drug addict. I was not having any sickness that I was about to die. Nothing as such. I was having a pride in me that I am a devoted person. I respect all gods. I respect every religion and I give all reverence to them. So I need Messiah. When people preached about Messiah to me, I said I don't need Messiah, but I respect Messiah. I respect Jesus Christ, but I don't need Jesus Christ. But the day come, Jesus made me to realize that I'm rejecting the Lord who created me. I denied my creator, but I accepted the creation as my creator. And I felt my mistake and my sin. I was broken. I was thinking I'm not worthy. That day Jesus said, "You are mine." Since that day till today, I'm so happy to worship this Jesus, to serve this Jesus. I'm still proud to speak about this Jesus because this Jesus is a Lord who created heaven and the earth. He's alive. He was there yesterday. He's here today, and He's there for future. And that's why, with all my confidence, I tell you, my dear people, you are appointed one. You are in the time of God, and the time has come that we will worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. So that is where I'm encouraging you. This is a season of worship. In the next episode, we are going to see about the true worshipper. What does it mean, true worshipper? But today, I want to encourage you. Remember, you are God's child. Don't flow by the world as He called you, because God calls you as His child. And this is a time of worship. Let's keep worshiping God. Let's keep focusing into God. God bless you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord will make His face shine upon to you and be gracious unto you. The Lord will lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom. Amen.